Why is it that it's hardest to connect to your clairs when you're either in trouble, need answers, or feel low in energy, the times when you're most likely to need help? That's a very good question. It's a very common problem, and I get it. You think, something's very important to you, and you think this is the time I need to be able to communicate, and I can't receive shit, and it just seems sort of ridiculous. But there's different reasons for that. So the first reason can be when you're upset, fearful, anxious, all the feelings you feel sometimes when you're really needing information for whatever reason. Those are low vibrations. And when you have low vibrations, you cannot connect to high vibrational information. Not that you can't connect completely, but it might be very limited, okay? And let's use the example when I had breast cancer. So when I'm having all these tests done, and this is life or death. It's like the shit's hitting the fan. I need answers. And you think, I need answers because I might have cancer and I can't hear shit. I can't receive shit. And isn't that some shit, right? Well, the problem is I was so scared and worried and anxious that those vibrations, not only are they low, they block the channels. When we're receiving high vibrational divine information, our vibration has to be similar to that information to receive it. And you might think in this moment, well, if you if you get possibly diagnosed with cancer, you might be getting diagnosed with cancer, you're not going to be like, I'm not worried, I'll talk to my guides, I'm feeling good so I can receive. Obviously not, okay? But that is simply how it is. If you are worried, if you are fearful, you cannot connect, okay? So that's the first thing. Remember that even if something's not as serious as cancer, if you're really worried about what car to pick and you're so afraid you're going to pick a lemon, you will not be able to receive if you are overly attached to the outcome, to the information. If you are clinging like this, you cannot receive. And the ego will tell you it is very important that you know this. You don't want to fuck this up. You don't want to have any problems. You're trying to navigate things with no difficulties. And this would be the time to know information. Well, you cannot connect from that place of clinging, from that place of fear, from that place of anxiety. And even if you're not feeling anxious, like let's say you're feeling pretty good, but you're like, I want to know, I need to know, right? You cannot connect, not very well from that state. And part of that, besides what those vibrations do to your energy and do to your chakras, which is close them, block them, cloud them, okay? So that's what happens for sure with those, of why you can't receive well. The other thing that's trying to be taught, and it's frustrating, you're not going to feel better when I say it, but it's just the truth. You are being taught to trust, right? You are being taught that the highest and greatest good for you is being worked out, and without so much of your participation. Now, I don't mean no participation, but I mean like you are not controlling everything. You are not steering this ship 100%. There's way more helpers and bigger picture things going on. Okay, now I don't mean hands off, but a lot of times we do think we are controlling everything and every outcome, and it's no, not at all. So, you're being taught to trust, to be in alignment, and to know that even if you buy that car and it's a lemon, that you will have learned some things and you will have navigated the situation, and you would have navigated whatever was presented to you in the moment, right? You're basically learning, I trust, I'm capable, and I will handle whatever happens in the moment it happens. So to go back to the cancer thing, many people, me included, would have been like, well, this would be something good to know, right? Well, once I already had cancer and they were doing biopsies and all this stuff, if my guides would have told me, yes, you have cancer, how would that have helped? How would it have changed what was going on? I'm still going to doctors. They're on top of everything. Um, just them saying, yes, you do, would have just freaked me out. It wouldn't have been helpful. Now, I know my ego thinks it would have been helpful, but my guides know it wouldn't have been helpful. The cancer's already there, things are already in motion, and we just now need to go forward, and we are not going to freak you out, okay, when everything is already being worked out. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, there are things we are just meant to go through, okay? And if we knew the information, we would somehow avoid them. There's necessary lessons in so much, whether it's cancer or whether it's, getting in an argument with your neighbor. There are lessons. And it's very hard for our ego to understand what the lessons are, especially when we're just upset or scared or pissed off or annoyed. And you think, geez, if you would have told me, I could have avoided this. And the guides will say, exactly, and we didn't want you to. Sometimes you're allowed to know things and sometimes you're not. And from our perspective, we don't understand that because we think, well, you told me all this other stuff, but you didn't tell me this. And that is something I would have liked to know. And again, what we feel is important in this human body is usually not considered what is important for our higher self, for our soul, for our growth. And so, the divine giving you information, they look at all that. And it's like we're very much in the 3D. We're trying to navigate everyday life. And, a lot of times it is simply control. And your guides are trying to teach you to let go of that. Even when I did ask my guides after my biopsy, I kept asking, do I have cancer? And I sort of was getting a no, but something about that didn't feel right. And I, of course, asked many times, which is, what we do. We keep asking and asking and asking. And finally, what I asked, instead of yes or no, do I have cancer, is I said, if I did have cancer, would you tell me? And they said, no. And I said, why? And they said, don't you think that would be hard to hear? And on a side note, I knew then that I did. I knew from that answer that I did. But you know what? They were right. And I remember I was in the shower, I'll never forget when I asked him this, and when they said, don't you think that would be hard to hear? It would have been terrible to hear. And also, I wouldn't have trusted it. I wouldn't have believed it. If they would have said, they were saying, no, you don't have cancer, perhaps my ego was answering. And I didn't believe that. And if they would have said, yeah, I wouldn't have believed that. I was in a state of fear and anxiety, and, it would have just made it worse. Sometimes you're not meant to know, not at that time, right? And, it's usually after whatever has happened has passed that you can ask your guides, why didn't you tell me? Or why was I not receiving? And what was I learning by not receiving? Asking that question later can be incredibly eye-opening, and it can really shine a light on the bigger picture that was going on that we couldn't understand in the moment when we were in our anxious, controlling state. My guides were then aligning so many things. Like right before I was diagnosed with cancer, and even before then, they were setting things up to make sure that I had another mammogram and that the right person was looking at it, and that, the appointments, the doctors, the radiologists, like everything was lining up so that cancer could be found and taken care of so I could continue living here, right? And that is also a important point of why sometimes we cannot receive or we don't receive, because it is being worked out. Okay, we think we've got to work it out though. We've got to do it all. We've got to control it, and there can be no problems. There can be no hiccups. Don't upset me. Don't make me scared. Don't make me anxious. Let me just control it all. Let me control the whole universe, right? They were like, she has cancer. We're going to make sure she finds out she has cancer. And then we are going to make sure she goes to the right people to be treated in the best way she can be treated. Right? So you can see there's many different reasons why we don't receive. Our vibration's low, and we're trying to receive high vibrational information. Not going to happen. That's why self-care is so important. Meditation, resting, sleep, mental health, physical health. These things make the vessel much better for receiving high vibrational information. Also, letting go of ego, control, fear, anger, all of these things, the more we let them go, the more we can receive information, and the more we can receive it when the shit does hit the fan, okay? Because even with all that I had going on, there was times I was receiving clearly, and I was in the midst of having cancer and having surgeries. Why was I able to? I credit it with my long relationship with my guides. I credit it with meditation, and being scared during my cancer treatment actually made me very, very present. It was like this beautiful side effect. I didn't worry about anything else but me and getting better. And it created this ultra present state. Okay, I had to get there through a shitty way, but it was an ultra present state where nothing else mattered, and it actually made me receive a lot better. So remember that. Hopefully you don't have to get cancer to do that. You can meditate, but being in an ultra present state where it's just right now, it's just the information right now, and you're not trying to do predictive things, and you're not trying to figure out everything and control everything, can allow for a state where you are able to ask questions of concern and receive helpful information. Well, Spirit loves you so much, and I say this all the time. They will teach you lessons, and they will teach you to let go. So if they say, this person is always wanting to know the future, they are always trying to avoid every problem, and we see them clinging. They are clinging so tightly to fear, to control, right? They will say, we have to teach them to let go of that. So we're not going to tell them the information they want to know. And that can be a bitter pill, but it's a necessary one. So that's another reason why you sometimes know with ease, and then other times you don't. And you think like, well, why aren't you telling me now? And they're like, well, because we can sense that you have a control problem, and we are going to teach you to not have one. And you can learn the easy way or the hard way. They will happily do both. It's, what the ego considers important and necessary is very different than what your higher self and your soul does. And so that's why it's so important, even if you have to do it afterwards, to ask questions. Why couldn't I know? What were you teaching me? What was going on? What was the lesson? What was my soul hoping to experience? When things have worked out and you've calmed down, you can ask, and it is enlightening, to say the least. Things that I thought were real shitty that I experienced, and I don't even mean serious shitty, but like just dumb stuff. I have asked my guides, like, what was I learning? Why did that happen? Oh my God. Sometimes it is so different than what I was thinking. And I'm like, oh, that was for my greater good. Like, that was so I got here and there. And it can be beautiful. Like, I push for you to ask those questions because it's a form of healing. It's definitely learning something. And once you can see that you have always been being looked after, even if you don't feel you were, but you'll see how they were. That allows you moving forward to trust more, to not always seek the answer for everything, to trust the universe, to trust the divine, to trust yourself, that whatever happens in the moment, you will rise to the occasion. I hope this helps. Much love, babes.